Hello, everybody. It's James. It's the CEO Jimbo Show. I'm still calling it that for now. Anyway, yet again, I have another episode on Malaysian Airlines Flight 370, the Boeing 777 that uh, disappeared about 10 years ago and is still missing. I've been working on it for the last 2 weeks since my last video on this subject, and I managed to get quite a bit done. There's some of this that I already knew of when I published the last video that I just it didn't come up. A couple of revelations to me, and so on. I'll get to those in a minute. Um, Here I am. It's Patriots Day here in Massachusetts. I'm also Boston Marathon Day. So I was kind of like working on singing. I was out busking and I'm having to kind of like get my mind back onto this. I spent a lot of time in the last 2 weeks working on this research. I got a little extra time too, like on last Saturday, and also on Friday, where I sometimes kind of like split where I work kind of half my time on this and then half on something else. And I've been working almost the whole time on it, mainly because I'm starting to write a book on it. Anyway, we'll get into the subject here. I have kind of my outline here for what I want to cover here. And I mentioned on a video, either last video or the video before, I think it was actually two videos before on this subject, that there wasn't any communications from the passengers. That people found it kind of odd that there wouldn't have been an attempt for the passengers on the flight to try to contact people and so on. And since saying that, I've since learned that there's sort of like new evidence that there actually were through a Netflix video. Maybe you've heard of it. And they're basically saying that there was kind of an attempt by at least two different passenger parties to try to call out to loved ones on the ground. And in both cases, the person didn't quite manage to answer in time. And so they're really sort of distraught that they missed that call and so on, in addition to, everything else. And I've been talking about lists. This is kind of college strategy. I have a book called What Smart Students Know, and the author, Adam Robinson, kind of breaks down different classes into types. There's like type 1 classes, type 2 classes, type 3 classes. And just my interest on this seems to kind of fit into, I believe, what he considers a type 2 class, which is like anthropology type classes and like maybe history classes and things like that. And the thing that really gets you the good grade is to like compile everything in lists. And when it comes to like taking any kind of exam, whether it's multiple choice or it's like essay exams, you can just pull those lists out of your head and just start writing away, or you can figure out in the multiple choices what the answer is because you know the lists. And I'm doing that with almost everything in here. There's like parts lists, there's passenger lists. I mean, there's groups of passengers. There's like the calligraphers. There's the tech people that had sort of inventions going on. There were people that were sort of like making epic moves and so on. I mean, there's just a long list of different types of passenger groups and so on. Cell phones, actually just phones in general. There was like an epic phone call that somebody tried to make to the flight deck, and it sounds like, from what I understand, it went through and sort of got opened, the connection, but there was only like air sounds, and there wasn't any verbal communication with the crew, and so on. And then now I'm finding that there's sort of like two different types of cell phone calls. There's the ones calling out, where somebody on board the plane passenger tried to call a loved one with some sort of message of goodbye or whatever. And in both those cases, the phone call was missed by the person. And then there's also phone calls where somebody was trying to call a loved one. I guess maybe like the plane was due at like 6:15 or something like that a.m. And so the loved ones were trying to call the people on the flight or something like that. And there was something weird about they were expecting to get their answering machine or the person in person and got something else, that it just rang and rang and rang and rang, which was quite unusual for the relationship between the caller and the answerer. Anyway, so I'm very interested in that, working on that. This is kind of really what tonight's video I think is kind of the main subject here, is this conflict in credibility perhaps between these two ladies. You've got Miss Latif, who is the lady that claims to have seen MH370 from a commercial airline flight where she was going from a place in Saudi Arabia to Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, and just past India, the east coast of India, was looking out over the water and thought she saw what she thought was the wings and the tail of MH370 in like the Bay of Bengal or the Andaman Sea or northern Indian Ocean area and so on. But clearly on in that kind of neck of the woods, if you will. And then there's this Miss Hendry, who is was a lady that was working for a satellite imagery company that's now defunct, out of business. And she heard about the missing flight and, like maybe a day or two after it went missing, and thought that she might be able to like use company satellite imagery to kind of find something. If there was like parts in the water, she thought that she had sort of an inside look at that. And so she started to kind of study her pictures, and she found what she thought was the kind of broken nose of the plane, broken fuselage and tail in the South China Sea, kind of just south of Vietnam and so forth. So here you got a conflict. You got one lady that's saying that she saw the wings and tail of the aircraft down on the kind of the southern portion of the Bay of Bengal area, and you got a lady that's saying that she saw sort of the broken up nose, fuselage, and tail of the aircraft in the South China Sea. So I'm trying to figure out, is one right and the other one wrong? Or did this airplane get sort of like, kind of hit with a missile or something like that, or midair, where it, part of it fell into the South China Sea and part of it fell into the, southern tip of the Bay of Bengal? I'm just trying to come up with some answers here. The next one is, this is kind of a new revelation. I think this one happened after the last video. I was just rummaging through YouTube videos on the subject, and there is this student who claims that she missed the MH370 flight that went missing. If you don't know, MH370 was an ongoing regular flight that departed roughly at midnight, like every night. I don't know if it was 7 days a week or whatever, but this was the final MH370 that went missing, and they haven't had an MH370 since or something like that because of the disaster. But anyway, she was scheduled to be on the very flight that went missing, And she claimed that she kind of avoided that flight like the plague because she just had bad vibes about it. Like she had some information about it, but she didn't quite know exactly what it was that kind of scared her so much about it. But she didn't want to go on that flight. And that was the first time I'd ever heard anybody say about this. In fact, I thought that she was talking maybe about MH17 instead, because there were a lot of people that were sort of apprehensive about that one and were sort of like making calls out to like social media saying they can't believe they're on this flight. They don't, if you don't hear from us, we probably got shot down by a missile, which they did, it sounds like. But this one, no, it looks like she was talking about MH370, which kind of changes things. Then I kind of rethought about something. I have to kind of think about this one a little bit. And there was something else that sort of like kind of implies that now that I've heard this, it kind of changes my thought. But I'll have to think about that one for a minute. I wish I would have thought about that before I started the video. And then finally, I'm writing a book on this, and the current chat, it's sort of a working title. It's MH370, Wrestling a Lesson Out of the Disaster. So I'm kind of looking at writing something that will still be a good seller even if this aircraft gets found, which I'm hoping it does. Maybe I have to revise it a little bit with a new, new edition now that it's been found a little bit or something like that. But it's shouldn't really change it. Trying to make some sense out of this disaster. So anyway, it's in 4 sections. The first section is on witnesses. The second section is on parts. The third section is on navigational nuances or something like that. Just really sort of the track and trail and vestigial trail that it's left and so on. And then the fourth section is just other, everything else and so on. So anyway, I've been working on that. I've kind of shifted from writing a autobiography about my 20s to writing this book, which seems like maybe it's going to get actually done and, on the market kind of thing. I don't have any pictures. I wish I had some drawings, but they sometimes come up, they sometimes don't. I've been doing a lot of writing down these things. Here's that Hendry. This is the lady that claims that she saw the thing with her satellite imagery. Cindy Hendry, a volunteer for now defunct satellite imagery company Tomnod, found what looked like plane debris in the South China Sea only days after the plane vanished on March 8. She said her discovery was ignored at the time when it was have crashed in the Indian Ocean, but 9 years later she claims to have found an M on a piece of wreckage, which is almost perfect match to the M on the side of the Malaysian 777. And this was, who's my source? Alexander Butler, March 9, 2023, MH370 crashed down in the different ocean, thousands of miles from key search area, says researcher who claims to have spotted vital clue on satellite imagers taken days after the jet. That's a really long title. That's the whole title. And this was www.dailymail.com.uk. And I retrieved it 31 March 2023. You'll see more of my quotes, and maybe I'll get better at reading those to you, and so on. Almost out of time here. Wish I had kind of some more details here, but I just have to kind of put this all off for next time. You'll hear more about my book and so on. The I guess I'll switch over. Please like and subscribe and all that type.